A single power line, sitting somewhere between a substation and your street, is the only reason water comes out of your faucet the moment you turn the handle. Most people have never thought about that connection. Water feels like something separate from electricity. One comes from a river or a reservoir. The other comes from wires overhead. But underneath your kitchen sink, those two systems are tied together in a way that almost nobody notices until it stops working. Think about what actually happens between the moment rain falls into a reservoir and the moment it reaches your glass. Water gets pulled in through an intake. It moves through a treatment plant. Chemicals are added to make it safe. Pumps push it into storage tanks. More pumps move it through the pipes under your street, keeping everything under pressure so it can climb stairs, reach upper floors, and arrive at your tap with enough force to fill a cup in seconds. Almost every one of those steps needs electricity to happen, not water pressure from a hose, not gravity alone. Real electrical power, running machines, all day, every day, without most of us ever giving it a second thought. So here's the question worth sitting with for a moment. What happens to all of that when the power goes out for a long time? Not for 20 minutes during a storm, for days. The answer is more complicated than most people expect, and that complexity is exactly what makes this worth understanding. Some homes would barely notice a difference at first. Others could lose normal water service surprisingly fast. The difference between those two outcomes has almost nothing to do with luck. It comes down to how the local water system was built, and that is something most residents have never once looked into. Picture your city's water supply as a chain with several links. The first link pulls water from its source. The next link treats it. Another link stores it. A final link pushes it through pipes to your home. Every link in that chain can be affected differently by a power outage, and that is where the real story begins. During the first few hours without power, many systems keep running almost normally. Storage tanks hold water that was already treated and pressurized before the outage began. Some utilities have backup generators that kick in automatically. Gravity helps too, especially in cities built on hills, where elevated tanks can supply lower neighborhoods for a while without any pump running at all. This is the part that surprises people. Gravity can genuinely keep water moving for a period of time, even with zero electricity. But gravity only works if those tanks are already full, and somebody, or something, has to keep refilling them. Once the tank starts running low, the system needs power again to pull in new water, treat it, and pump it back up. Gravity buys time. It does not make the system independent of electricity. As the outage stretches from hours into a full day, a new set of pressures starts building. Backup generators need fuel, and fuel needs delivery trucks, and delivery trucks need roads that are clear and safe to drive on. Operators need to physically get to their facilities, which is not always simple during a major outage caused by a storm, a flood, or a wider grid failure. Communication systems, the ones that let workers monitor pressure and pump activity from a distance, can also lose power, forcing utilities to fall back on manual checks. None of this means chaos is guaranteed. Many utilities plan carefully for exactly these scenarios, but planning is not the same as immunity. A plan can account for a lot of problems and still be tested by something bigger than expected. Here is something that rarely gets mentioned in casual conversation. More than 9 out of 10 drinking water systems in the country serve fewer than 10,000 people. These are not the massive metro utilities most people picture when they imagine a city's water department. They are smaller operations, sometimes running on tighter budgets, with fewer staff members and less backup equipment sitting in reserve. That does not mean they are poorly run. Many of them operate reliably year after year, but it does mean they often have less room to absorb a prolonged crisis compared to a major city with multiple redundant systems working at once. Now compare that to a private well. If your water comes from a well instead of a city system, the pump that brings it up from underground almost certainly runs on the electricity in your own home. No city storage tank, no gravity system helping you out. Once the power goes and any backup battery or generator runs dry, that pump usually stops. And so does your water, often much sooner than a municipal customer down the road would notice a difference. Apartment buildings hide a similar surprise. In a tall building, the city's water main might be working perfectly fine at street level. But getting that water up to the 10th floor, the 20th floor, or higher often requires booster pumps built into the building itself. If those pumps lose power, upper floors can go dry even while the building's ground floor lobby technically still has city water flowing beneath it. The building's own emergency generator, if it has one, might be reserved for elevators and hallway lighting, not for pushing water 20 stories up. So already, we have 4 very different households living under the exact same blackout. A gravity-assisted city system might hold on for a surprisingly long stretch. A well-dependent home might lose water almost immediately. A high-rise apartment might lose water on the 15th floor while the ground floor tenant fills a glass without a second thought. There is no single national countdown clock ticking the same way in every home across the country. But even in homes where water keeps flowing, there is a second problem that is honestly more unsettling than the first, and it is one most people have never considered. Running water and safe water are not always the same thing. Municipal pipes are designed to stay under constant positive pressure. That pressure does more than push water toward your tap. It also keeps outside contaminants from getting in. Soil, groundwater, and anything sitting near a cracked or aging pipe stay on the outside as long as pressure inside stays higher than pressure outside. When pumps slow down or stop during an extended outage, that pressure can drop. And when pressure drops low enough, the system can actually start pulling material in from the surrounding ground instead of pushing water out. This is exactly why officials sometimes issue boil water notices, even in situations where the tap is still working perfectly well. The water is flowing. Nobody can guarantee, yet, that it is clean. This single detail quietly breaks one of the most common assumptions people carry around. If it comes out of the faucet, it must be fine, right? Not necessarily. A functioning faucet only tells you that pressure exists somewhere in the pipe behind it. It tells you nothing about whether that water passed through treatment the way it normally would, or whether contamination slipped in while pressure was low. And boiling is not a universal fix either. Boiling can handle a lot of biological threats in water, the kind of organisms that make people sick after a system loses pressure. But it does nothing against certain chemical contamination, fuel residue, or specific compounds that might enter a compromised system. That is exactly why officials sometimes shift language from a boil water notice to something stricter, a do not use advisory, telling residents not to drink it, cook with it, or even touch it for certain purposes, no matter how long it boils. The specific advisory matters more than any general assumption about what boiling can fix. Real disasters show how far this can go beyond a few uncomfortable days. After major storms in different parts of the country in recent years, some residents went without safe drinking water for weeks, not hours. During one severe winter storm in Texas, nearly 2,000 separate public water systems were placed under boil water notices at the same time, spread across a state most people think of as far too large and too developed for something like that to happen broadly. These were not isolated, freak accidents in forgotten corners of the map. They happened in real communities, with real infrastructure, following real utility guidelines. And they are part of a documented pattern researchers and officials have been tracking, one where extended power failures and disasters repeatedly strain the systems responsible for something as basic as tap water. So why does the number 3 keep coming up in emergency guidance if there is no single nationwide deadline when water stops? The answer is simpler and more practical than a countdown clock. Health agencies recommend storing at least 1 gallon of water per person, per day, for a minimum of 3 days, and building toward a 2-week supply whenever it is realistically possible. That recommendation exists because response times vary, infrastructure damage varies, and nobody can promise exactly how long any individual household might need to rely on stored water instead of the tap. It is worth pausing on how small that number actually is compared to normal daily life. 1 gallon a day sounds manageable until you compare it to what a typical household actually uses without thinking twice. Estimates suggest the average person inside a home uses somewhere close to 80 to 100 gallons a day once you count showers, laundry, dishwashing, and every flush of a toilet. A single stored gallon is not meant to replace that lifestyle. It is meant to cover the bare minimum: drinking, basic food preparation, and enough water to maintain some level of hygiene until normal service returns. That contrast says something important about how modern life is built. An entire household routine, showers, laundry, dishwashing, multiple toilet flushes a day, rests on a level of water availability that almost nobody consciously appreciates, because it has simply always been there. And water loss rarely stays contained to a single inconvenience. When pumps fail, it is not just drinking water at stake. Firefighting depends on strong water pressure moving through hydrants. Hospitals depend on continuous clean water for countless daily procedures. Restaurants depend on it for food safety. Wastewater systems depend on functioning pumps too. And when those pumps stop, sewage can back up into homes or discharge somewhere it was never supposed to go. One outage, quietly working through an entire chain of dependent systems that most people never connect back to a single failed pump. There is another layer to this that has nothing to do with pipes or generators at all. It has to do with what people actually keep in their own homes. In one investigation following an extended loss of water service in a real community, researchers found that fewer than half of the households surveyed had any emergency water stored at all. Fewer than 1 in 10 had more than 5 gallons on hand, which is barely enough to cover a single person for a handful of days. Some residents admitted they drank straight from the tap during an active boil water advisory, simply because the water looked clear and they assumed clear meant clean. That gap between confidence and preparation is worth noticing. Most people assume they would handle an extended outage reasonably well, right up until they actually try to picture how many gallons are sitting in their own kitchen at this exact moment. For most households, the honest answer is somewhere close to 0. Here is a detail worth sitting with, one the video will not try to fully untangle for you. Utilities that serve more than a few thousand people are legally required to prepare formal risk assessments and emergency response plans under federal law. On paper, the system is more prepared today than it has ever been. And yet, real disasters keep producing real gaps between the plan on paper and the water actually reaching people's homes when conditions turn extreme. A generator sitting in a utility building looks like a solid guarantee, right up until the day the fuel truck cannot get through, or the flooding reaches higher than anyone planned for, or an already overworked staff cannot reach every facility at once during a storm affecting an entire region simultaneously. Preparation reduces risk. It does not remove it. None of this means panic is the right response. It means understanding replaces false comfort with something more useful, an accurate picture of how the system around you actually works. Knowing whether your own home depends on a municipal system, a private well, or a building's internal pumps changes what a blackout actually means for you personally. Knowing that a working faucet does not automatically mean safe water changes how you would respond to an advisory instead of ignoring it. Knowing that stored water is meant for survival, not your normal routine, changes how much you would actually want to have on hand before you ever need it. The story here was never really about a single countdown ticking down the same way in every home in the country. It is about a system so reliable, so quiet, and so deeply wired into electricity that most people only discover how it works the moment it stops. If you'd like to explore some helpful resources on building an emergency water supply, you'll find them in the description.